Good morning, Lieutenant. I'm Colonel Hargrove from the Office of Strategic Services. I'll get right to the point. The OSS was formed 2 years ago by presidential order to serve as the intelligence branch of the United States military. Our mission is anything and everything. Espionage, sabotage, subversion, search and rescue, you name it, we do it. Now, from time to time, we recruit people from outside of the regular ranks, especially if they've got a particular skill we need. Like you, Lieutenant Patterson. What you did last Monday got our attention. I know you consider yourself just another anonymous pilot in the Transport Corps, but taking out a half a dozen of the Wehrmacht and then sneaking back into friendly territory is quite an impressive feat of soldiering by anyone's measure. I had your records from basic and OCS pulled. Your instructors gave you high marks for weapons and munitions training. You were the top marksman in your class. Excellent leadership skills.
Medal of Honor for the PlayStation 1. What a great introduction into the Medal of Honor series. This is a war game that takes place in World War II, so you're running around killing Nazis, and you're killing a lot of Nazis. Like in every level you kill about 30 guys, so that's the way it is. When you're just moving, you can only turn around and strafe. But when you aim, you have total control of your gun, but you can't actually move when you're doing this. This is basically not a game you need a mouse and keyboard for. It's a game you use a controller for, obviously. This is a good game because it does everything well, and it's not overly complicated. A lot of first-person shooters, especially today, it's just too much stuff going on. There's too many weapons, too many combinations, too much switching going on, too many moves. This game keeps it simple. You can just shoot by looking at the enemy, you can aim, you can duck, you run in different directions, and you can use different weapons, and also you can jump. That's it. Nothing complicated. It's like the bare bones of what you need in an FPS, but because it does everything well, that's great. I don't need complicated. I just need fun. If a game can keep it simple but fun, why would you need anything on top of that? And also, there are some things in this game that you've seldom seen in the 90s game. Like the enemies you shoot, they react differently depending on where you shoot them. Shoot him in the leg, he might fall on one knee. Shoot him in the head, his helmet flies off. Shoot him in the head again, he dies because he doesn't have a helmet anymore. Most of the guns are pretty cool, especially the rifles, but I found the grenades to be kind of unnecessary. I died with grenades more times than I killed people with grenades, let's put it that way. I think it's probably because the enemies can kick a grenade away from themselves, so it's like you throw a grenade and they just kick it away in your general direction, which is not good. They can't do that with bullets, so I'm gonna stick with bullets. Thank you very much. Go ahead, SS officer. Try to shoot this bullet away. Oh crap, he did it. Alright, well that guy was really good at soccer. That's what Nazis are famous for. They are really, really good soccer players. You gotta give them that. A lot of them were genocidal maniacs, but man are they good at soccer. In every level, the game gives you objectives, but it's basically running around a pretty simple maze and shooting guys in the face. It never really feels like a maze because they make it look all nice and sparkly. You're running around pastoral settings or towns. You never feel like a mouse in a laboratory. You feel like an actual soldier going wherever he wants, even though the game is fairly linear. Well, very linear. But let's just say the game is very good at hiding that fact. The story in the game is told through a collage of like wartime propaganda videos of Adolf Hitler and just some photos. And also once in a while there's some pretty nice voice acting in the game. The enemy AI in this game isn't smart, but you really don't need them to be that smart. Not just because it's a PS1 game, but also because the game would be way too difficult if the AI was any smarter than it is. The enemies have a horrible line of sight, so it's hard for them to see you. Maybe it's because it's dark, but I see them fine, so it's just stupid AI. Also, they're not that smart when shooting you. They always miss. They're like stormtroopers. Nazis in video games are as bad as stormtroopers when it comes to aiming at the protagonist. But there is a lot of them. I mean, you'll be killing like 30 guys in every level. If they were any smarter, you would die like a lot. This game wouldn't be that fun if you die after every other gunfight. It's a really good FPS game, and I want to compare it to other FPS games I've reviewed in the past. The problem is, I've very seldom reviewed first-person shooting games from this era. I in fact don't remember me ever reviewing an FPS from this era. So I guess I'll just compare this game to modern FPS games because I've reviewed a few of those. It's not going to be a fair comparison. It's kind of a stupid comparison. So I'm not going to compare like graphics or technical aspects of the game because obviously a Call of Duty game from like 2010 is going to have a billion more things in it than this game. It's going to be so much more advanced. It wouldn't be a fair comparison. So I'll just compare and contrast which game was more fun for me to play versus which game is objectively better in every way. So let's start with one first-person shooter I reviewed a couple of years ago, Battlefield Hardline. It's not really a wartime first-person shooter. It's more like a cop drama than your typical war first-person shooter, which definitely makes it unique. It was definitely fun to play, but I got kind of bored with it pretty quickly, actually. The story in Battlefield Hardline is probably better than the story in this game, but in terms of pure, unadulterated gameplay, I probably had a lot more fun with Medal of Honor for the PS1 than Hardline overall. It's like you watch the cutscenes in Hardline, and it's a modern version of Miami Vice. It's a cop drama, so you get hooked with that. But then you play the actual game and just kind of get bored. The actual physics of the game just kind of melt into every other modern first-person shooter ever made. It's ultimately just forgettable. Medal of Honor, nothing forgettable about this one. But maybe that's just because it's like the first in the series, so it's hard to forget the first one. It's like, I think the first Final Fantasy I ever played is Final Fantasy VII. Is it the best Final Fantasy out of any Final Fantasy? A lot of people think so, but there are some people who can argue that, and I can argue that too. Final Fantasy VI, Final Fantasy IX, objectively they're just as good as 7, but 7 is still near and dear to my heart. It's my favorite because it's the first one I played. It's that first hit of the crack pipe that got me hooked. Well, actually, I'm not hooked anymore. I don't really care about Final Fantasy. I played the last one, and I was just like, alright, I'm driving around in the car. I don't even control the car. I guess I go left and right sometimes. Thanks for giving me that option. Now let's take something like Call of Duty Advanced Warfare. I mean, Call of Duty is your prototypical first-person shooter. When somebody mentions first-person games, first thing that comes to mind is Call of Duty. There have been a trillion billion Call of Duty games. For the most part, they are all the same. And people really don't even buy them for the story. People play Call of Duty games for the multiplayer. It had a unique story compared to other Call of Duty games. It had like Kevin Spacey in it, so it had a star-studded cast. It also mixed up the regular first-person shooting with driving various types of vehicles, which was fun. But where did I have more fun? Well, honestly, Advanced Warfare is a game that I had more fun with than Medal of Honor. Again, I'm not comparing which game is graphically or technically better, obviously it wouldn't be fair. But just in terms of how many minutes out of an hour I had a smirk on my face, a Joker-like grin from ear to ear as I watched Batman fall into a pit of shark lava. I don't know, shark lava. It's like mutated sharks, and you squeeze them, you juice mutated Mars sharks, and their blood is literally just like boiling lava because they're mutated. I'm gonna move on now to the last first-person shooter that I'm comparing this game to, Far Cry 4. A great game. Far Cry 4 is a game I probably had more fun with than Medal of Honor, but it's mostly because Far Cry 4 had this big, massive open world, and this game is pretty much a point A to point B maze. It's completely unfair though, because obviously this game couldn't have a big open world like Far Cry. So even when comparing how much fun you had, it's still not a fair comparison. So let's scratch that last comparison. Forget I compared this game to Far Cry 4. That's the equivalent of a man putting on a wig and enrolling in an amateur boxing tournament for women. Medal of Honor for the PlayStation 1 is a really fun game. It's not the best first-person shooter ever by any stretch of the imagination. It's not even the best first person shooter of its generation, but it was a great entrance into the Medal of Honor franchise. Who said you had to be the best? You could just be a fun experience. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more classic game reviews. Goodbye, my friends.